We were in middle school.
Hi guys, it's Kathy. I hope you're doing well. I started a minute early. That's going to mess everybody up. It used to be starting late. Oh, but we have to get through this trial, guys. We have to hear a lot about wind from experts on wind. And we got to get to this. We got to get this attorney asking some questions. And the lawyer objecting to these questions. The attorney is so good. All right. I don't think there's any announcements. It's Friday. I'm not streaming tomorrow. I have off. My son is about to download League of Legends, which he hasn't played in years. So that the sound factor is going to, in the background, is going to raise a lot. I'm already PTSD from years ago. Hi, Lacey. I didn't share my screen. I'm scared to share my screen because it's just going to turn the sound off. I downloaded all kinds of software today, guys, looking for something that I can use. And really, I hate it all. I hate them all. I'm not happy with any of them. I might go buy a Mac just so that I can use what Bill is using. He seems to be having no problems, right? But I don't want to because this computer's not old. Anyway, this is like 1 second off from where we were yesterday. So I think we have two more depositions to go through. Like, what did she say? A 20-minute one and I don't remember. I almost put my headphones in today because the cats took the little piece off. This is black. It's supposed to be blue. These are free from the airplane, and they're falling apart. This is hanging on by a string. I need to get, and I bought a whole bunch of ones. I bought real expensive ones. None of them work, except for these free ones. So I'm gonna go to the dollar store. I'm gonna get more just in case.
Today you're in slightly different capacity. I understand today you've been designated as a corporate representative for SCG Mechanical, DBA Wade Mechanical. Do you understand that that's your role today?
I do, yes.
Mr. Hammond, at the time of this incident, when Mr. Lorraine lost his life on the work at the Texas Stadium building in San Antonio, what was your job title?
Operations manager
And for what entity?
for Wade Mechanical.
At the time of this incident, were you on site when the air handler unit was being rigged, lifted, and unrigged on the 4th floor of the building?
No, sir, I was not on site.
Did you come on site after the incident happened?
Yes, I did. I arrived on site just after it happened.
So since you were not on site at the time that the air handler unit was being rigged, lifted to the 4th floor, and then was in the process of being unrigged or removed, your testimony as a corporate representative would be based exclusively on the information you gathered, not on your personal information. Is that fair?
That is fair, yes.
What is your understanding of the responsibility of Wade Mechanical pursuant to the blanket agreement for the subcontract work?
Wade Mechanical is responsible for a turnkey mechanical and plumbing system installation for the project-specific scope of work.
And effectively, as the agreement states, they have to do everything necessary to complete the scope of work in the contract documents they've agreed upon. Is that fair?
Yes, that is fair.
Which would include providing materials, equipment, tools, personnel, and if necessary, subcontractors to assist in the work.
That is correct.
And is it Wade's position that it was solely and exclusively responsible and had control over the manner, means, and methods of performing the subcontract work that it agreed upon?
Yes, I agree.
Burton did in fact require a copy of a lift plan from Wade Mechanical prior to the lift occurring. Is that fair?
Yes, that is fair.
The lift plan was developed either by Wade Mechanical or by a subcontractor TNT, either working singly or together, correct?
That is correct.
And you're not aware of any changes to the lift plan by third parties?
No.
Do you have conducted or led the job safety analysis, the job hazard analysis, being that was conducted before the lift occurred?
Neither do we.
Does Way have an opinion as to whether or not this sort of wind event may have caused or contributed to unit toppling over?
In reading the witness statements, there's several mentions of wind. But ultimately, it's unknown if the wind had any factor in the unit falling.
Make sure I understand Wade Mechanical testimony correctly. After David Marie died, you're trying to say, as it relates to lifting operations, Wade Mechanical did not make any changes?
That's correct, that's what I'm saying.
And in October and January, your company decided, look, we're not gonna have our guys participate in unrigging these loads whatsoever, right?
That's correct.
We're gonna pay additional money. I think I saw somewhere around $20,000 between those two of us to have TNT come in with a specialty rigging division and handle everything from A to Z, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
You would agree with me, that should have been done the first time in September 2021, right?
No, sir.
You think the individuals that are employed by Way Engineering and Way Mechanical on the fourth floor absolutely should have participated in unrigging that load?
Yes, that's correct.
But prior to today, did Way Mechanical form an opinion as to whether or not the first lift plan was adequate or inadequate?
Wade Mechanical's opinion is of the opinion that first lift plan was adequate.
I said, and for a company that did absolutely nothing wrong according to you, you failed to follow your company policies to identify findings, causes of the incident, safety recommendations, and project recommendations, didn't you?
Yes, that's correct.
And it wasn't because you got sued, right?
No, sir.
Are you aware of anybody that complained that morning that it was too windy?
No, sir, I'm not.
Are you familiar with this document, TNT Exhibit number 1?
Yes, I do. I am familiar with that.
Did you review it in preparation for your deposition today?
I did.
Did you review all aspects of this document?
Yes, I did.
All right, are you familiar with these terms and conditions that are here on the second, third, and fourth pages of this document?
What do you mean by familiar?
If you have the screen really
Did you
tiny,
review these
they look like a happy face or a face. They look like the eyes and the nose.
in detail sufficient enough to testify today what these terms and conditions require of Wayne Mechanical and TNT?
No, I did not.
Are you familiar with the fact that before the job that was being undertaken at the time of the incident, my client TNT sent Way 2 different quotes for the lifts at issue?
Yes, I'm aware.
Okay, and one of those quotes was for use of the cantilever bar, correct?
That is correct.
And one of those quotes was for the use of the spreader bar, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Handling of Way Mechanical decided to use the spreader bar instead of the cantilever bar for this job, true?
That is true.
And TNT offered the use of its own specialty rigging crew for this project. Are you aware of that?
Yes, it's part of the cantilever bar.
And Mr. Handling also made the decision not to use TNT's specialty rigging crew for the project on the date of the incident, true?
It's true.
I'm sorry, can you repeat your answer?
Yes, that's true.
Mr. Hammond, on the job that was being undertaken at the time of the incident, it was not TNT's job to install the HVAC unit, is that correct?
Define. What do you mean by install?
Isn't it true that TNT's role in this job ended as soon as the unit was placed on the ground?
TNT's responsibility ended as soon as the unit was placed on the ground and all rigging was removed.
So, Mr. Hammond, in regard to installation of that HVAC unit, as soon as that crane was disconnected from the unit, D&T had no obligation in regard to any actual installation of that unit, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And when I talk about the HVAC unit, do you understand that that's the same thing as the AHU unit?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And so, for any of this testimony today, for all intents and purposes, HVAC and AHU means the same thing. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Is it true that there were some skates being used as equipment in connection with this project?
Yes,
And weight on those skates, true?
that's correct, yes.
And there were some blocks used in connection with this job as well, right?
Some wood blocks, yes.
And those wood blocks were also owned by Way.
To my knowledge,
How about the chain falls? There were some chain falls involved in this project as well, weren't there?
there was.
And those were also owned by Way, true?
Can you be more specific, which chain falls? I think there was multiple areas where chain falls were used.
All of the chain falls used in this particular job were owned by Way, is that correct?
Not to my knowledge, and I don't agree with that.
And what basis do you have to disagree with that?
But the chain falls that were used in the rigging of the units down at ground level, I believe those were part of, those were part of the TNT. I want you to understand that those were part of the TNT.
All right, how about the chain falls up on the fourth floor?
To my knowledge, those were provided by the Way.
What about the come along up on the fourth floor? Was that provided by Way as well?
But, you know, that I don't know one way or another.
Okay, so, it wouldn't, you have no idea whether, who owned it, is that true?
Yeah, that's true. I can't tell you whether Way owned it or TNT.
Do you know what that come along was used for?
Yes.
Tell me what it was used for.
In reading the incident statements, that come along was used to help bring the sections of the unit into the building, or to provide some sort of stabilization, right? As the unit was coming into the building.
Well, which was it, Mr. Hammond? Was it stabilization or was it to help pull the unit in?
Helpful.
And the come along, to the best of your knowledge, that was attached on the bottom corner of that HVAC unit, is that true?
Yes.
So let me repeat my last question, so I'm not sure I heard your answer, Mr. Hammond. That come along was attached to, the bottom corner of that HVAC unit, true?
True.
Okay, was there another come along being used to pull, the unit into the building, to the best of your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge. I don't recall there being more than one come along.
Mr. Hammond, my understanding of your previous testimony, both in your prior deposition and earlier today, is that you no longer work for any Way entity or any entity that's even associated with Way. Is that true?
That's correct. It's a true statement.
And how long was it after the incident that you left your employment with Way or any Way entity?
Approximately 2 years. I've been gone for just under a year, and we're almost at 3 years of the incident.
Mr. Hammond, my understanding is that your counterpart, corporate representative for Way here today, Ms. Ball, that she also does not work for Way Mechanical. Is that your understanding, too?
You just define work.
Sure, so she's not currently employed by Way Mechanical, to the best of your knowledge.
To the best of my knowledge, when she gets her W-2 every year, it doesn't say Way Mechanical on it.
All right. And so neither corporate representative here to testify today actually works currently for Way Mechanical. Is that true?
That's correct.
there was a difference in price in the quotes between the cantilever bar and the spreader bar. Is that true?
Yes, I do remember, yes,
And the use of the cantilever bar was more expensive than the spreader bar, fair?
yes, it was.
Does the difference of $6,775 sound right?
I don't recall, I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen that.
Mr. Hammond, I want to talk about some of your testimony from earlier today, and close to when you began your deposition. Your testimony with the questioning that was asked of you by Burns' attorney. In that line of questioning, do you remember reviewing the contract between Way and Burn? It just in general.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the master services agreement, or the project specific subcontract. Yes, I do remember reviewing the contract.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hammond. And TNT in this instance was a subcontractor of Way, true?
That's correct.
Mr. Hammond, you're not a crane expert, are you?
No, I have not.
Have you ever operated a crane?
No, I have not.
Have you ever had any certifications dealing with crane operations?
No, I have not.
Have you ever worked for a crane company?
No, I have not.
Mr. Hammond, are you aware of any requirement of the federal government for a crane to have a working anemometer on board?
No, I'm not aware.
Are you aware of any requirement of the Texas government to have a working anemometer on board a crane?
No, I'm not aware.
Are you aware of any policy, whether of Burn, TNT, or any of the Way entities that would require a working anemometer to be on board a crane performing a job such as this one?
No, I'm not aware.
Are you aware that there are many methods of determining risk of high winds?
I am. Yes,
And one of those methods would be checking the weather forecast, true?
yes,
How about a windsock at the top of the crane, something like that, something that would tell you how, indicate whether the wind is blowing hard or not? Would that be another method of determining whether there's wind?
yes,
Okay. On this, were you familiar with this particular construction site?
I was
All right, you've been out there before?
multiple times, yes.
Okay. And another way to tell if there was any wind would be to see if there was any sort of debris in the air that's around the construction site. Fair? I want to ask you about the JSA process. I have just a couple of questions here for you. Are you familiar with the standard customs and practices and requirements of JSAs?
I am.
And when I say JSA, is that fair to use that interchangeably with JHA?
For the sake of what we're doing here today, I believe so, yes, I think that's fair.
All right, thank you. And one JSA stands for job safety analysis and JHA stands for job hazard analysis, true?
Correct.
It is common and standard practice to identify hazards on JSA.
It's shiny like
JHA,
skin.
true?
Yes, that's true.
And the purpose of doing that is to keep workers safe, fair?
It's one of the purposes, yes.
And it's prudent and common and standard
That skin.
to identify hazards or risks that could happen, even if they're not obvious at the moment of that the document is created. Is that fair?
That is fair.
And so the fact that wind was identified on the document issue here that we've been talking about today, that doesn't mean necessarily that there was 60+ mile an hour winds, true?
True.
Okay, that doesn't mean that there were 30+ mile an hour winds, is that fair?
I'll say yes, that's fair, but I don't know what mile per hour. I, you know, I don't know the difference, right?
So by winds being listed as a potential hazard on this document, all that means is that the hazard was potential. It doesn't mean that there was an active extreme hazard, true?
True.
Do the plaintiffs want us to continue with the second, or do you want to do your?
Court, I guess it's a separate deposition, so we'll play our part of this and we're gonna hear from him again.
Okay,
Rose?
you have a second part as well, or you just have one part? How long is this first part?
First part is
55 minutes.
55 minutes.
Okay. You guys okay?
He's definitely gonna take us all the way to 4 o'clock, I think, based on what
We're going to 5 o'clock.
I understand.
Oh, okay.
What you're hearing here from him is gonna take us all.
It's
the way.
gonna take yours and yours just to 4. Okay. Are you guys okay? All right, let's go. Please proceed.
Today you're creating a slightly different capacity. I understand today you've been designated as a corporate representative for SCG Mechanical, DBA Way Mechanical. Do you understand that that's your role today?
I do, yes.
At the time of this incident, were you on site when the air handler unit was being raised, lifted and unrated on the 4th floor of the building?
No, sir, I was not on site.
Did you come on site after the incident happened?
Yes, I did. I arrived on site just after that.
Burton did in fact require a copy of a lift plan from Way Mechanical prior to the lift occurring. Is that fair?
Yes, that is fair.
The lift plan was developed either by Way Mechanical or by a subcontractor in TNT, either working singly or together, correct?
That is correct.
And you're not aware of any changes made to the lift plan by Burton, are you?
I have not, no.
With respect to the determination of what tools or equipment, for example, square bars, or their slings, chain falls, would be used to actually rig the air handler unit for lifting, who do you understand made the determination of what equipment to use or not use?
TNT,
With the determination of what personnel would be placed in what locations on the 4th floor, that is, who would be within the danger zone and who would be placed outside the danger zone. Do you know who made the determination of who would be placed in what positions on the 4th floor of the A&M building?
for Ways personnel, Mr. Lurie was responsible for the work team that was up there with him. With regards to TNT, the craning and the ring, the signal person, that would have been TNT.
Are you aware that the day before this lift occurred, that the air handler unit section had fallen or tipped over while located on the ground?
Yes, I am aware.
And this particular section that they tipped over the day before the lift has a coil located on one side of the big steel box in which it's enclosed, right?
That is correct, yes.
Mr. Hammond, do you have an understanding of who directed or controlled the actual rigging of the air handler unit section so that it could be lifted by the crane?
Yes, I do have an understanding of that.
And who was that?
It's TNT,
You know which personnel at TNT were in charge of that rigging process?
no, sir, I do not.
Do you know whether or not any personnel besides TNT personnel or
I sort of feel like he won't know we're talking about him.
hands on the wall while rigging of the unit?
No, sir, I'm not aware of anybody besides TNT.
No,
When
no
the
more smiling lawyer,
Actually, this
no.
occurred, who was operating the crane to conduct the lift?
TNT's a crane operator.
With respect to the unrigging of the unit, that is, once the unit was flown to the 4th floor, the removal of the lifting straps, chain falls, and other devices, who was in charge of making the decision of how that equipment or tools would be removed or disengaged from the air handler unit section?
So the how and the when was part of the pre-lift plan, and the rigging and the crane services from TNT.
Are you aware of whether or not TNT provided, a step-by-step guide on this item would be released first, then this particular item, and this is how the unit would then be moved into the building? Or was this, determined as the project went on?
I am not aware of any step-by-step guide.
Do you know who handled the actual physical hands-on work of unrigging the unit when it was on the 4th floor?
Way Mechanical was the hands-on unrigging of the section at the direction of TNT.
Guys, when a Gen Z asks about Dragon, never reply. Don't ever reply to Dragon, because that's not where he was going. Just ignore it.
Do you know whether or not there were any TNT personnel on the 4th floor at the time that the unrigging of the unit was actually being accomplished?
Yes, we were aware that there was a signal person who was in contact with the crane.
Is that the sole person for TNT on the 4th floor at the time?
Yes,
Do you, does Wake Mechanical have an understanding of what may have contributed to a cause this particular air handler unit section to topple over onto Mr. Marlongo and Mr. Doherty?
it's our understanding that when the signal person from TNT gave the direction to raise the unit after the rigging had been taken off or partially taken off, but that was when the unit fell on Francisco and David.
Is it Wake's position that the unit fell over because it was an unevenly balanced load, or was improperly rigged, or was caused by some sort of outside force?
Wade is of the opinion that when the direction was given to raise the unit from the signal person to the crane operator, and the unit not being fully rigged, only being partially rigged at that point, is what led to the unit falling over.
With respect to evaluating the wind and determining whether or not the wind could or might be a factor in conducting a lift, who was Wade relying upon to make that determination?
Wade had contacted TNT as a subject matter expert for the craning and the rigging. With regards to whether or not it was safe to lift, if the wind had got to a point where it had to be, operation had to be ceased, Wade was relying on TNT and their instrumentation to make that call.
Do you know whether or not there was any optical instrumentation available to TNT at the time that this lift occurred to measure the wind?
We learned after the incident that the device within the crane to measure the wind speed was not working.
All right, Mr. Hammond, you ready to continue?
Yes, sir, and
I'm just gonna ask you right from the get-go. Do you intend to change any of your testimony that you previously gave under oath today?
no, I do not.
Okay, you stand by that testimony, right?
Yes, sir.
And you fully prepared today to review the documents and testimony that's been undertaken in this case, testify to the topics that you're going to speak about, right?
So can I ask you a question, Mr. Burley? Are you speaking to me as you're deposing Steve Hammond, the individual, or are you speaking to me as Steve Hammond, the company representative?
Well, we're doing both. I'm deposing former representative today, but I've also been told that we're going to finish up your deposition. And that
No, I'm fine with that.
your
He's not talking, so I've said, I promise.
folks have asked us to just do one deposition today instead of doing two for you. So you're testifying both on behalf of Wade Mechanical and we're finishing up your deposition. You understand that?
I do. Thank you for the clarification.
This lift occurs. If the folks we just talked about that are collaborating, find out if there's a weather-related hazard, that has to be addressed, does it not?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, one of the things you have to do in terms of developing this lift plan is you have to actually develop and identify the specific means and methods for the rigging, lifting, and setting of the weight.
A
Yes,
salt and
yes, yes.
pepper. I want to
And then
shoot.
obviously you
Okay.
gotta have the participation of the crane company, including the riggers, right?
That's correct, yes. Yes,
And that would include the rigger that rigged it up on the bottom floor, and Juan Garcia, who was the rigger up on the floor, right?
no, sir. This,
How's that?
so, you'd have to ask TNT how they come up with their lift plan and their crane plan, and who they involve with during that process, with the initial start and the initiation of the lift plan. We involve them as part of our overall plan, but I don't know, the nuts and bolts of who they involve on their plan doesn't happen in front of us.
CJ, no.
Yes, yes, well, the rigger and crane company supposed to review the appropriate means and methods for rigging during the planning phase.
We relied on the rigging and crane company as a subject matter expert to be the initial development of the planning phase.
I didn't tell you who, look, I didn't ask you who was at first. I agree with you. TNT put the lift plan together in this case, didn't they?
Yes,
Right. They circulated the first draft, did they not?
yes, sir.
I just want to know if the riggers and crane company are involved in that process as you laid out on this page.
Yes, sir. They had to be part of the process.
Okay, good. And once that happens, once you have a plan that's approved, and in this case, my understanding is TNT created the lift plan, right?
Yes, sir.
And then step number one is you don't just do the lift, you gotta meet, and discuss the lift, right?
Yep. Yes, sir. That is correct.
We call that a pre-pick meeting, right?
Yeah, a precast planning or a JHA, whatever acronym you want to use.
Right, but you've heard the term pre-pick meeting, right?
Yes, sir.
That's the safety meeting that happens at the start of the day, right?
It's a safety meeting that occurs before the activities.
Hi, Kelly.
Sure. And you've identified at least 6 groups of folks that need to participate in that meeting, right?
That's correct, yes.
That's not unique, that's standard practice, right?
I would agree, yes.
You don't just wing a lift operation, you hold a safety meeting. These individuals have to participate and be involved in that safety meeting, right?
Yes, sir.
That includes the project manager, Mike Hemley, right?
Correct, yes.
That includes the project foreman, who is that David Lurie?
Yes, sir. It would be David Lurie.
You got all the TNT folks in terms of the crane operator, riggers, signal person, they all need to be involved, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Safety department, is that Mr. Flores?
Or one of his designees.
Sure. And then ultimately, the general contractor, which in this case was the superintendent, Mr. Perez, right?
I will say yes to the general contractor. As far as it being Mr. Perez, I can't agree with that.
And in terms of what his testimony was as to who was involved and what their role was both in planning this lift and participating in the safety meeting, you don't have any information because you weren't there and you haven't seen his testimony, right?
That's correct.
I mean, have you reviewed a single document or testimony about anybody that described what was said or what occurred during this safety meeting?
I don't believe I have.
Real quick, just so we're clear, we're talking about this safety meeting. You didn't attend the safety meeting, right?
No, sir, I did not.
You don't know who did, right?
I know who from Wade Mechanical, attended the safety meeting.
You know Mr. Hank did, right?
Correct.
You didn't even read his testimony as to who ran that meeting and what was discussed, right?
Is the question, are you asking me if I read his testimony?
You didn't read his testimony to figure out what was discussed or what was done in that safety, right?
Correct, and not reading Mr. Huntington's testimony.
And sitting here today, you don't know what was discussed or what was said during that safety meeting, do you?
It should.
I'm not aware of every single aspect of what was discussed during that meeting, as you're asking.
Tell me who you spoke to about that safety meeting, sir.
Spoke with Anthony Ramon, William Baldwin, Mike Hemling. I believe it was Julian Garza.
You talked to them about the safety meeting?
Talked to them about yes, the pre-pit meeting.
Did you see where Mr. Baldwin says he didn't even attend that meeting?
No, sir.
You don't recall his testimony where he said the guys on the fourth floor didn't even attend the pre-pit safety meeting?
I don't recall that, no.
Well, let me ask you this, sitting here today as the corporate representative, do you know what was said or what was done during that safety meeting, sir? Or would you refer to the testimony that's been acquired in this case?
I'll defer to the testimony.
But what we do know from looking at your own words, sir, is you've identified what has to be reviewed during that safety meeting, right?
Yes,
Absolutely. And when we talk about who should be discussing it, we know from the prior page, all six of these groups of folks need to participate in this meeting and discuss these points, right?
yes, that is correct.
That includes the step-by-step hoisting and rigging plan, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, who's gonna serve as the lead rigger and crane operator? You gotta know that, right?
Yes, sir. You do.
You've gotta confirm who the rigging personnel are gonna be, right?
Yes,
And then you've gotta figure out if they're even qualified and certified to do that sort of work, don't you?
yes, that is correct.
All right, when you dab someone up, you hit their hand a couple of times, and he hits so freaking hard, and it hurts. So why would I do that? Why would I do that? Because he wants to? I don't gotta. He's an adult. I don't have to please my children anymore.
You can't do is have a bunch of pipe fitters that don't have any sort of qualifications or certifications participating in a lift operation. That has to be addressed from the safety, right?
Can you repeat that? Please?
What you gotta do is, well, what you can't do is have a bunch of pipe fitters participating in a lift operation if they're not qualified or certified riggers. That has to be addressed from the safety, doesn't it?
Yes, sir. It does.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but don't you just have to have one certified person there? Not everybody.
Can you be specific? What was addressed? If pipe fitters were going to be rigging, craning?
You found that question difficult, sir? We're looking at number 7 here. You see that language?
I do. I see that.
Was that discussed during this lift operation, or do you not know?
Yes, it was discussed.
Just told me earlier, you don't know what was discussed during that meeting just a moment ago. Remember that?
Okay, I am certain now that the person asking these questions is this guy right here, even though his lips aren't moving. That's fine. Because he's an ass. The person asking these questions, he'll ask a question that doesn't make sense to the construction worker because that's not how they do things. And the construction worker is like, can you repeat that? What are you saying? What? You're looking at what I'm looking? You can't see what I see?
I know that during that pre-pit meeting, the individuals on site who were responsible for the crane and rigging were there with all the paperwork identifying who was going to be doing that work.
Number 7 has to do with figuring out whether or not they have the proper certifications and safety credentials. Do you see that language?
I do.
Is that done?
And to my knowledge, yes.
Tell me what facts you're aware of that would prove to the jury that that was discussed.
I am aware of the TNT mobilization paperwork that was presented to David Louis that identified who was on site from TNT, what their roles were, their names, and, you know, the applicable licensing, certification, that paperwork, that was filled out the morning of.
Talking about the crane operator certifications?
I'm talking about the list that states who the individual is, what role they're performing, that piece of paperwork. I can't, I don't have it memorized, so I can't go through each heading and tell you what the status.
Did anyone from Wayne Mechanical participate in the unrigging of this load survey?
Yes,
Or was there qualifications, certifications, or safety credentials discussed during this safety meeting?
this whose qualifications. Says,
Talking about the Wayne Mechanical folks on the 4th floor that participated in the unrigging operation. You with me?
yes, I do.
What an ass.
Okay. Was there credentials and safety? Was there safety credentials and certifications discussed during the safety meeting, or do you not know?
I did not know.
Should have been known, right?
No, sir.
Okay. So when you say during the safety meeting, we will review the following, including rigging personnel and personnel whose certifications and safety credentials were submitted during the lift plan review. Are you trying to tell me that the individuals on the 4th floor employed by Wayne Mechanical or Wayne Engineering, their credentials should not have been discussed during the safety meeting?
The way mechanical personnel on the 4th floor were not, they were not assigned, they were not the riggers. They were not the crane operators, so no, they unrigged the units under the direction of TNT, who was responsible for the rigging, unrigging, you know, lifting of the unit.
Wayne Mechanical's testimony under oath is that pipe fitters do not need any sort of certification or safety credentials to unrig a load at TNT's direction on the 4th floor. Proof?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then obviously during the safety meeting, you've got to do a JHA, job hazard analysis, right?
Yes, sir.
That's the time where we get folks together and you discuss the work to be performed, right? What, who's gonna be doing what work, right?
Yes.
The hazard associated with the work, right?
Right.
And steps to mitigate or eliminate those hazards, right?
Yes, that's correct.
It's a documented process that has to be filled out on paper, right?
Correct, yes.
Everybody's supposed to sign, right?
Yes, sir.
That is one of the requirements that all 6 of these groups of folks have to do during the safety meeting, right?
Yes.
After all of that takes place, then you can start with the pre-hoisting activities. True.
Yes, that is correct.
And the steps that you outlined in here are not perfect, but this is really what you identified earlier as standard practice procedures, right?
Yes.
In other words, if I understood your testimony, you're saying there may be some additional things, but you have at least identified some of the things that absolutely should take place when you're doing a lifting operation, both in planning and then executing the lift, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, I'm going to show you what I've marked as exhibit number 37.
And a lawyer that doesn't know what they're talking about, doesn't understand their language.
There was a decision after this to make sure that TNT had a specialty rigging crew on site for the second and third lift, the ones that happened in October 2021 and January 2022, right?
Yes.
Because it turns out the individuals that were on site in the September 2020 lift, they were not a specialty rigging division, were they?
No, sir. That's my knowledge.
And in October and January, your company decided, look, we're not gonna have our guys participate in unrigging these loads whatsoever, right?
That's correct.
We're gonna pay additional money, I think I saw somewhere around $20,000 between those two lists, to have TNT come in with a specialty rigging division and handle everything from A to Z, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
I mean, if we go down to 351, another change that was made was to put together a written narrative plan, right?
Yes, sir.
Because the first plan that was used on September 22nd, 2021 didn't have a written plan, did it?
Correct.
Now all of a sudden, there's a change that's being made, and here we see the project manager for Burn Construction on October 5th, writing to your project manager, Mike Hemling, and you're CC'd on this email, aren't you?
Yes, sir, I am.
And specifically now, the general contractor is requesting a written narrative plan, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct. Correct.
Should have been one back.
Again, that's normal though. Projects change and things get added and removed all the time. That might have been added again because they were supposed to do this lift 14 days ago before they did it. And because there was a delay in construction, they couldn't. So they had to get a new lift. So of course they had to get a new safety plan, new everything.
In September of 2021, right?
Yes, sir.
Because you and I talked about a plan needing to identify the means and methods of rigging. Remember that?
Yeah, yes.
The first plan that was used on the day this man died didn't include that information, did it?
No, sir.
Now, all of a sudden, there's been a change that's being implemented by the general contractor that should have been in place back in September of 2021, right?
Yes. Sorry.
Now there's a change being implemented by the general contractor that should have been implemented back in September of 2021 for the first one, right?
That is correct. There's a request for a written narrative.
Sure enough, that's exactly what your project manager does. Mr. Handley sends you an email to the safety department and makes it crystal clear, looks, Burn is asking for a step-by-step rigging plan for these units for the second one. You see that?
I do see that, yes.
Again, something that should have been included with the first lift, right?
Yes.
Back to my exhibits here. Show you what I marked as exhibit number 16. This is the second lift plan in October, right?
I thought the depositions
Correct,
were
yes.
done. I was wrong.
Just so the jury's clear, the initial lift on September 22nd, 2021, that was the lift involving the death of David LaRue, right?
Yes,
Then there was a second lift to remove that unit for inspection, correct?
true.
That's this lift plan that we're looking at in October of 2021, right?
That is correct, yes.
And then there was a third lift that took place in January of 2022 to then finally lift that HVAC unit up to the fourth floor for its installation, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so we're looking at the second lift plan here. Right off the bat, you can see a step-by-step narrative in terms of the rigging and the lifting of this unit, true?
That is true.
This step, this information was totally missing from the September 2021 list, right?
Correct, yes.
I mean, you and I talked about a collaboration that has to take place where folks have to identify the means and methods of the rigging, right?
Yes, that's correct.
We can see that there is no sort of means and methods of the rigging that's identified in the first lift plan, is there?
That's correct.
Mr. Henley told me this second and third lift was a totally different process. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that.
I mean, the sort of information that should have been in the first lift was in the second and third lift, but it was missing from the first lift. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with it fully.
I mean, the ultimate lift plan that was put in place. Let's look at it. It's exhibit number 15. This is for the first lift. You can see here, and I think you and I looked at this briefly previously, right? In your prior deposition. You can see the rigging plan that was sent over by your office to the general contractor on September 17th. You see that?
Yes, I see that.
This is the lift plan for the first lift that TNT approved, right?
Yes, this communication is for the first lift plan.
Didn't ask you that. This is the lift plan that TNT approved, right?
This is the first lift plan that was submitted.
Right. Before it was submitted to the general contractor, it was written up and approved by TNT and sent to you, right? Or your Wade example, right?
That is correct.
Did you review the testimony of the train operator in this case?
No, sir, I did not.
You didn't know that the math that's in this lift plan is totally wrong. You didn't know that?
No, sir, I did not.
You didn't know that this lift plan wasn't even used on the day that this man was killed, did you?
I did not.
You didn't know that the crane that is identified in here is totally different than the crane that actually showed up on site. You didn't know that, did you?
No, sir.
You didn't know that this HVAC unit was 4,000 pounds and was totally different than the weight identified in the lift plan that your safety department approved, did you?
No, I was not aware of that.
You didn't know that the crane certifications here, the individuals on these certifications, they didn't even show up to the site. You didn't even know that, did you?
Are you presenting something other than 31 right now? By chance? The way you said it made you feel like maybe you had something you're trying to show. There we go.
You didn't know that the individuals that were identified as the supposed operators in the lift plan never even came out to the site, did you?
No, sir, not.
You didn't know that there is absolutely zero rigging certification cards attached to this lift plan, did you?
Again, I don't remember without reviewing this.
Your testimony in this case, just so we're really clear for the jury, is Way Engineering did nothing wrong on the day that this man died. True?
That's just true.
What?
From what I understand, He wasn't there. He's the corporate representative.
Wayne Mechanical, nothing wrong on the day of this and that, right?
I agree with that.
There is nothing that Way Engineering or Way Mechanical did that caused or contributed to this incident in any way, right?
I agree.
Let me show you what's been marked as exhibit 21. You were very quick earlier today, sir. Oh, by the way, can you see this contract between Way Mechanical and TNT?
I can, yes.
You were very quick earlier today to.
Is he eating?
tell
I think he's eating.
Or you think TNT crane and rigging really screwed up on this job. You remember that testimony?
I don't remember using the words.
Well, I mean, let me ask you, this is the contract that TNT executed that applied to the work David Marine was doing out there, right?
Yes, sir.
And even identifies the lift that out at the A&M campus, phase 2, right?
That's correct, yes.
I bet you're gonna answer this question very carefully, but let's run through a handful of them, okay? TNT was responsible for this lift from A to Z one day,
I don't know what A to Z means.
so. They were responsible for the rigging and the lifting of this load one day.
Yes, sir, they were.
They were subject matter experts one day.
Yes, that's correct.
You guys hired them specifically because they were the crane experts, right?
That is correct.
When Mechanical expected them to handle.
Your
this
safe word is
load
please don't stop.
And the entire scope of the lift, right?
That's correct.
I mean, this was, for all intents and purposes, they were supposed to do everything out there. That was the expectation when Way Mechanical hired them, so, true?
You clarified everything.
Sure, when it says, they were supposed to do every part of this scope of work, weren't they?
Correct.
All work necessary or incidental, right? Isn't that the words it uses?
Yes, those words are there, yes. I read it.
That was your
Those words
company's
are there,
expectation,
yes.
Drew.
Our expectation was that they would handle the crane and the rigging activities. And it's entirety.
What else besides the crane and rigging is involved in the lift operation?
So I just want to make sure we're being, talking about the same thing.
I hear you. Is there something else? Some other part of a rigging or a lift operation I'm not aware of other than rigging it and lifting it?
Yes, sir, there is
What is that?
site control, access, communication with the designer and end user. There's other things. other
Non-rigging.
physical activities.
Okay, well, who had site control?
Burn is control.
Okay, no doubt
What did
about
he
that,
say?
right?
I have to rewind it because that was kind of important. Who had site control is what the question was.
Burn is control.
Okay, no doubt about that. right?
Burn.
Yes.
He said burn. So that's the general contractor.
They were a general contractor, this was their site, right?
Yes, sir, they are, yes, they were the general contractor.
Okay, so we know that Byrne Construction had site control. We know that TNT had responsibility for the rigging and the lifting of the unit, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Then we talked about a collaborative effort in terms of the planning phase
Some
and the
questions.
safety meeting phase that has to include both Way folks, TNT, and the general contractor, right?
Correct, you did talk about it, yes.
Okay, and that's a collaborative approach that requires all of those entities to participate, right?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, is there any other part of the lift or any other part of this lift operation that we have discussed?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Under this contract, TNT was supposed to do the rigging, the lifting, and collaborate on the planning phase, true?
Yes, that's correct.
Does Wade Mechanical have any criticisms of TNT crane rigging as it relates to rigging up, lifting, or unrigging the load?
Yes, we do.
And the three issues that I discovered, are those the same issues that Ms. Ball mentioned this morning? Ms. Graham?
Yes, sir.
She was critical of TNT. She said there was repeated complaints of the wind, and that's something TNT should have addressed. Do you agree with that?
I'm unaware if there's repeated complaints regarding the wind. If you're asking, yes, I don't, I'm unaware of that portion of your question.
This is important. The only investigator for Wade Mechanical who has ever looked into this incident more than 3 years out for the date that this man, or close to 3 years out from the date this man was killed, you're unaware of whether or not there's complaints that morning about it being too windy, right?
No, no, you use the term repeated complaints of that day, and I'm saying I'm unaware of that.
Are you aware of anybody that complained that morning that it was too windy?
No, sir, I'm not.
And
He just said he's unaware of any complaints about the wind that morning. And most of them say that there wasn't complaints about the wind. It was just a couple of those people now, years after it happened, that says, oh yeah, there was wind problems.
it's one testimony in this case says in the village, right?
That's correct.
You know, Billy was complaining about the wind that morning, didn't she?
I know that he made a comment in his incident review interview regarding the winds.
You think it was just a comment? Sir?
Do I think his statement was just a comment?
Yeah,
I don't know how to answer that.
he was complaining that it was too, he kept saying it was too windy for this pit. You read that, right?
I did read that, yes.
There was a number of complaints that morning that it was windy, wasn't there?
Sure. So I'm unaware of the amount of complaints that morning regarding that.
If you could prepare for this deposition again, I just want to ask you honestly, would you have liked to have looked at the sworn testimony on that issue before testifying today?
Sure, I don't know how to answer that question for you.
Would you,
And
would you have liked, sitting here right now, would you have liked to look at all the sworn testimony in this case on that issue, the claim issue?
yes,
Because there was, even in the incident reports, there was a number of folks that told you in either in incident reports or in statements that the unit fell over because of the wind, true?
I did read that in some of the incident reports.
I can't sign in a Facebook.
Even Mark Flores and Mike Hamlin wrote a small report that reflected that too, right?
I would have to reread theirs, to be able to read that.
I mean, well, I mean, look, this is, I can go through all these incidents if we want to do this. Okay. You know, it was on TNT JSA, true?
I'm unaware if it was on the GSA.
You had it with the sooner JSA, hadn't you?
I don't recall if I have or not.
You hadn't seen any documents for TNT, and you tell me there is?
I don't know that I said that, and mentioned how I'd seen their EDOT the day of.
We'll do this one by one. Let's look at exhibit 18. Start to give you that. These are some meeting prep notes here that I got from Burn Construction. You see this?
I do see that, yes.
You ever seen this before?
I don't know if I have enough, to be honest with you.
Prep meeting notes for the very day that David Marine was killed sitting here today. Do you recall ever seeing these notes?
I
Hmm.
did not recall seeing all of them.
Here's what we were told. And walk the job site to determine the location of the crane and any noticeable hazards for all to be aware of. You see that?
Yes, I do see that.
Do you even know who participated in this safety meeting that was conducted? That's discussed here in these meeting notes?
No, sir, I do not.
Let's figure that out. Let's look at exhibit number 5. Do you know TNT met with the general contractor that morning?
I do not, no.
See, it says arrive on site, meet with GC. You see that?
Yes, sir, I do see that.
Earlier, you were asked all these questions about whether or not the general contractor participated in the safety meeting, anything like that. And in all fairness to you, you haven't seen these documents putting up on the screen, have you? Do you recall seeing this document that I put up on the screen as exhibit 5? We'll do it that way.
No, I do not
You
recall.
don't recall seeing exhibit 18 either, do you?
No, sir, I do not.
Have you seen do you recall seeing exhibit number 4? Notes that I got from Byrne?
No, sir, I do not recall seeing that.
You told me earlier you hadn't seen any documents that Byrne Construction produced in this case, right?
Correct.
Back here, we find out there's a pre-tech meeting. You see that?
Yes, sir, I see that.
You see 3 companies that participated in that pre-tech meeting. You see that?
Yes, sir, I do.
But again, you've never seen this before, as you can recall, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So again, sitting here today, you don't know who participated, what was discussed, the action items they went over. You don't know anything about that, do you?
That got
Correct.
drug into court. You didn't bring drugs into court. Gotcha.
Let's look at exhibit number 3. Now, you have seen these notes, haven't you?
Yes, they look familiar.
No, right on the front page, if we want to figure out what happened, we might think, oh, yeah, these are notes.
No, sir, they're not.
I think I visited Mr. Hanley. I think these, if I recall correctly, these are his notes. Do you recall him taking notes out there?
I recall me asking him to go out there because I was en route to the hospital with Mr. Marie.
You have since discovered that the wind was so bad it was rocking the unit, right?
Well, I've since read this, yes.
Another thing you read, let's talk about everything you read relating to this issue of wind. You see another note, makes it crystal clear. Second unit, wind dust unit flip, you see that?
Yes, I do see that there.
Let's look at exhibit number 10. I asked you earlier if you recall seeing any JSA from TNT. Do you recall reviewing any JSA from TNT?
No, sir, I don't.
So when it says on the second page, setting air handlers on the 4th floor, you see that?
Yes, sir, I do see that.
One of the hazards that this crane company identified was the wind, right?
Yes, sir.
No,
Yeah.
no, that's not right. I mean, it is right, but it's not right. They put all the things on paper that might possibly be a problem. Not that they were a problem. Anything that could possibly go wrong, they put on this piece of paper. That doesn't mean that those things actually went wrong.
And you told me you reviewed this statement that I marked as exhibit 7, right?
Yes, I have reviewed that before.
This is from Mark Flores in your safety department and your project manager, Mike Campbell, right?
Yes, sir.
Another thing you learned when you started looking into this is that the employees stated there was a gust of wind that caused the unit to tip over. You see that language?
Yes, did you see that language?
It says it does get a bit windy on the upper floor. You see that?
Yes, I see that in there.
Let's look at exhibit number 6. Because you told me earlier you don't recall seeing repeated complaints of wind. Wasn't that your testimony?
That's correct.
Now we're starting to see some repeated complaints of wind, aren't we?
We're seeing it written down multiple times. I don't know if it's the same person or if it's multiple people.
I mean, and then you reviewed, let's go down to page 102. You knew that Billy kept complaining, saying it was too windy for the pit. You see that?
Yes, I see that.
Anthony Ramon gave a statement on page 106. You see his name up there?
I do see his name.
You reviewed this too, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
He's complaining it was windy today. The first pit failed. You see that?
I do see that there, yes.
Then you got another statement down on page 118. And by the way, by now, sir, you can appreciate we're starting to see a bunch of folks that complaining that it's windy out there. Huh?
I don't agree that I appreciate anything that you just said.
I don't understand what they're saying.
There was repeating complaints of wind out on the site on the day we were letting them use air handlers. You trying to tell me that on your phone right now?
No, that's not what you said before.
You would agree with me, sir, there were repeated complaints, not just of wind, but that this unit fell over as a result of wind. Do you and I agree on that?
We're gonna agree that, I'll agree that's written down. Yes.
Well, you're not suggesting any of the folks from your company or TNT or anyone else were making up this stuff, are you?
No.
But one thing we do know, you would agree with me, if we go back to exhibit number 10, if you're having you identify as a frame company that wind is an issue, you better check the anonymity. You would agree with that, right?
Yes, I would agree.
We know to this day, crane operator couldn't do that because it was malfunction, wasn't it?
Yes, it was learned after the fact.
It's your company's position, is it not? That TNT totally dropped the ball in determining whether or not
And the crane.
such a hazard that it result in the lift stopping, right?
I don't agree with that because I don't understand what totally dropping the ball equates to.
Me,
It
me,
equates to the
another
air
word,
conditioner
if you're
failing.
knowing there's a wind condition, Mr. Hammond, and you're supposed to check the anemometer and it's broken, you're not supposed to start the lift until you check the anemometer. True?
Yes, I agree with that.
And they didn't do that because it was broken, right?
That's correct.
In fact, not only did they not do that,
I'm sorry, but no, that's not right. Isn't that tool just that? It's a tool. It's suggested, but it's not required, right? That's what they said earlier.
they falsified the crane inspection sheet that was that morning, didn't they?
I've never reviewed this before, so I would have to review that before I get into it.
You've never even seen a crane inspection sheet that morning, right?
That's correct. I haven't seen the sheet before.
You didn't know that he signed off on this thing being in great working order, other than a little oil leak and it needs service. You didn't know that, did you?
No, I didn't, no, I did not do that.
You would agree with me. So you should absolutely point that out and then get it fixed before you commence with the lift, right?
Yes, I would agree with that.
What you don't do is put on your JSA and check off the inspection button like everything's hunky dory. You don't do that, do you?
That's correct.
I mean, because, and by the way, did you know that the lift operator had never even seen the lift plan that was circulated and that we looked at earlier in Exhibit 15?
I was not aware that they operated on the same.
I'm gonna show you Exhibit 12. He put together this document. You see this?
Did you see that? Yes.
Checks off, crane
I don't see
inspection,
it.
down below, fail to identify a broken safety device called an anonymous. You see that?
Yes, I'm seeing this for the first time, so I don't understand 100% what this form is saying, but I can see it's checked off.
Well, I mean, right at the top, it says lift plan. You're telling me as the investigator of this incident, as the operations manager, you've never seen this lift plan before from TNT, have you?
No, sir.
You didn't know that the crane they sent out was totally different than the crane that was in the actual lift plan that was approved. Right?
That's correct. It was not aware.
Yes, that's correct.
Told you that the weight was 4,000 pounds for that unit. Can you see that?
Yes.
That ain't the number that's in the lift plan that your safety department approved. Did you know that?
Yeah, he knows that because it's a different lift plan, dumbass.
No, I did not know that.
You would agree with me that TNT absolutely failed to address the hazard they identified as wind on their JSA on this particular day, didn't they, Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
And had you been provided with all these documents that you've never seen until now, you would have reached this conclusion earlier than just right now, in all fairness, right?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what I would have done if I don't earlier than just now.
Let me help you out. You would agree with me, sir. that
Let me
as a
help you
private
out.
company, you identify wind as a hazard that one, and your wind goes to
Come
GoPro,
on.
and you sign off on your crane inspection sheet that everything's good to go, that's improper, isn't it?
Yes, I agree.
And we have seen numerous instances right now where folks testify or put in a statement that the unit blew over after a gust of wind hit. Do you recall that?
I recall. Yeah, yes.
Based on what you know now, this lift should have been halted until TNT figured out whether or not the wind posed a sufficient hazard to continue with the operation. Correct?
I agree.
The other thing that I learned from this call this morning is that Wade Mechanical's position is that it was unsafe for the radio man for TNT to form the brain up people on top heavy, unstable, and partially unsecured load. Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That was one of the reasons this unit fell over, killed this man, in Wade Mechanical's opinion. True?
Yes, that is true.
And then the third thing, criticism I learned this morning from your corporate representative colleague, Ms. Ball, was that the signal man failed to put himself in a position to see that there were pipe fitters that were working right up next to this unit. And that's his responsibility as a signal person. Do you agree with that?
I agree.
And so if you testifying on behalf of Wade Mechanical, had to identify 3 reasons that this unit fell over and killed this man. The 3 things that you have concluded is, number 1, the wind hazard was not appropriately addressed by TNT at the start of the death. Critical.
I agree.
There was an order that was given by a TNT radio man to a TNT crane operator to cable up on a top-heavy, unstable, partially unsecured load that was dangerous, and that's one of the causes of this incident. True?
Yes.
I
that's
agree with
correct.
that one.
And that crane signal man and flagged it. You know the TNT one I'm talking about on the 4th floor?
Yes, sir.
He should have put himself in a position to make sure that no Wade Mechanical or Wade Engineering pipe fitter was close to that unit while that crane operator was cabling up. True?
I agree.
And he didn't do that, and that's one of the causes of this incident, right?
I agree.
David Green, sitting here in front of the jury today, Wade Mechanical's position about that man is he was a good man, right?
Yes, sir.
He was a safe worker, wasn't he?
Yes.
He's the kind of person you count out, right?
That's an impossible question. Come on.
Yes, I agree.
And Wade Mechanical under oath today, their position is that that dear man did absolutely nothing wrong on September 22nd, 2021.
It's easier to answer, honey, do I look fat in this, than to answer those questions.
Yes, sir, that's fair.
The company that you would put responsibility on for the failures on is TNT Crane Rigging. Is that fair?
Yes, that's fair.
Are there any other causes of this incident that you're aware of that you and I did not discuss?
No, sir.
That's our submission.
Thank you. Defense, we're ready to go to the individual.
Yes, Your Honor.
How many minutes?
25.
Okay, you can proceed. James, how long is your response to this one?
Carlos, how long is it? How long is our response to this?
Approximately 28 minutes.
Okay, 25, 28. I'm ready, Mr.
We'll
Joey.
be
when
done
you
with
are.
depositions today then, guys.
That's your full name, sir.
Stephen James Hammond Jr.
Were you employed by Wade Mechanical back in September of 2021?
Yes, I was.
Your current employer is Wade
It looks
Mechanical,
like
right?
this is the guy who's asking these questions.
That is not correct.
Okay, who's your current employer?
CEC, the company called CEC.
Is that affiliated with a McCordy or Wade Mechanical entity?
No, sir.
When did you leave Wade Mechanical?
I left Wade in August of 22.
In September of 2021, you were employed by Wade Mechanical, right?
That's correct, yes.
You were their operations manager, right?
That is correct.
Tell me what your jobs duties were as an operations manager.
At a high level, I was responsible for the overall execution of our projects from the project management office side of it to the field labor.
You report to Kevin Pierce back in September of 2022? Or 2021?
In 21,
Yeah,
I reported to Kevin Pierce.
and his job title at that time was Vice President of Operations?
His job title in 21 was General Manager, Vice President.
So back in September 2021, you would have reported to Kevin Pierce Anyone else you would have reported to?
Yeah, I had, Tony McCorvey Jr. also would have been someone I reported to.
What was his job title at the time?
President?
Is he based out of the Houston office?
Yes,
You were based out of the San Antonio office?
Thank you.
that's correct.
And the individuals that reported to you, one of which would have been Mike Hemley, right?
That's correct.
He's the project manager for this particular project for Wayne Mechanical, right?
Yes,
What about Justin Wall?
yes, Justin did report to me.
Who was the senior project manager on this particular project?
So initially, Justin Walton was the project manager on this project. And we merged Mike Hembling in to ultimately take the project over from Justin, and Justin moved on to other projects.
And on the day that David Marie was killed, was Mike Hemley the only project manager on this job for Wayne Mechanical?
No, it was Mike Hembling, and then there was a gentleman by the name of Adrian Mungy, who was his assistant project manager. And those two combined with the project management team on that day.
At the time David Marie was killed, was Justin Walton had transitioned down from that project manager role for this project?
Yes,
Okay. So the two project managers that you would point the jury to would be, first of all, Mike Hemley, who was the senior project manager, right?
mhm.
Is that a yes?
Yes, sorry.
No, that's fine. Just want to make sure we get a clean record. And then Adrian would have been the assistant project manager working directly underneath, him, right?
That is correct.
Underneath the project managers, the next level really would have been the foreman or the supervisors, right?
Yes,
One of which would have been David LaRue, right?
yes,
David LaRue was a pipe fitter foreman, right?
yes,
Okay. He was employed by a company called Way Engineering, right?
that is correct.
What's the relationship between Way Mechanical and Way Engineering?
Way Engineering is the union entity. Way Mechanical is the open shop entity.
Everybody working for Way Mechanical is non-union, is that fair?
That is correct.
That's your knowledge. Folks working for Way Engineering, those folks are union laborers, right?
Yes,
And on this particular job, Way Engineering, which is a separate company, right,
yes,
was a subcontractor for SCG Mechanical, DBA Wayne Mechanical on this particular project, right?
yes, that's correct.
Is there a contract that you've seen between SCG Mechanical, DBA Wayne Mechanical, and Way Engineering?
Yes,
There is.
yes,
All right, let's run through a couple of other fellas that were out at this site. I just want to get a sense from you, Mr. Hammond, if you're aware of who they are. One fella's name I've come across is Francisco Macalongo. You familiar with that name?
yes, I am.
Did he work for Way Engineering or Way Mechanical?
Way Mechanical.
What was his job title?
Journeyman pipe fitter.
Julian Garza.
I'm familiar with that name.
Who did he work for?
I don't recall.
Do you know if he was union or non-union?
I honestly don't recall what company he actually worked for.
You know what his job title was?
I believe it was pipe fitter.
Alexis Perez. You familiar with that name?
I am, yes.
Who did he work for?
I don't, when I say I don't remember, It's because at that time, we also had some staffing agency providing temporary labor. And I can't remember if it worked for SC, if they worked for Way or if they worked for a temporary labor company.
What was his job title?
Pipe fitter.
What staffing agencies were you using at the time, back in September of 2022 or 2021?
I honestly don't recall their names.
Just one? Was it multiple?
It was just one, their name escapes me right now.
Anthony Ramon? Who did he work for?
He worked for, Way. He was a pipe fitter.
Wayne Campbell.
Yes, Way Campbell.
Is there anybody else? Well, let me ask you the last name, Billy Baldwin.
Billy Baldwin worked for Way Mechanical as a pipe fitter.
This incident happened on the fourth floor of a building project, true?
True, yes.
At the time, they were in the process of bringing an HVAC unit into the second building, right?
Correct.
Was there anyone else up on that floor at the time this incident happened that you're aware of that worked for Way Engineering other than David Lawrence?
No, sir.
Were the fellas that were employed by Way Mechanical, were they being supervised by Way Engineering employee David Lawrence?
Yes,
Which ones?
all of them.
Were you one of the fellas that commenced an investigation into what happened up there?
Yes.
I came across, I'm gonna share my screen. Well, I'm gonna go to exhibit number 34 now. These are some policies and procedures that we've received during the course of discovery. Are you familiar with this document?
Yes, I've seen it before.
This is the health and safety manual for your former employer, Way Mechanical, right?
Yes,
It sets forth duties and obligations that would apply to the folks that work for Way Mechanical, right?
yes.
Sure, I'm trying to figure out whether or not this manual applies to individuals that are employed by Way Engineering, does it?
That manual would apply to employees of Way Mechanical and or any of their subcontractors on any project as applicable.
What that would mean, and one of those subcontractors on the Texas A&M job was Way Engineering, right?
Correct.
So go back to my question. On the day that David Lurie was killed, this manual would apply to the employees of Way Engineering that were assigned to the Texas A&M project, right?
Yes,
So you would suggest as the operations manager, David, if you want to visit with somebody in the safety department who would have been responsible for overseeing safety on Way Mechanical's job at the Texas A&M site, you would say the two individuals would be Diane Napper and Mark Flores, right?
that is correct.
Also, it would also be Mr. Mums and Mr. Hembley's responsibility during the pre-job planning phase to initiate and ensure that safety requirements were met during the planning phase of the job, right?
Yes, that is correct.
And so ultimately, if the jury's trying to figure out whose job was it, to
16
make
more
sure
minutes.
that the lifting job in this case was planned correctly and implemented the safety requirements set forth in this policy, that would be the project manager's obligation, right?
Correct. Yes,
As the project manager for SCG Mechanical, are workers participating in a lifting operation supposed to be standing right next to loads that are being lifted?
the individuals participating in the work, depending on the situation, are allowed to be that close to the load during unhooking and hooking of activities.
How about pipe fitters that are working for your company? Are they supposed to be in the danger zone right up next to that HVAC unit?
If they're, as part of their work plan, has them entering that zone to unhook or hook a load up, then yes, they're allowed to be there.
I mean, during your investigation, did you take issue with the fact that pipe fitters were right up next to this HVAC unit?
Well, if you would have heard what he just said a second ago, if they were involved in on rigging, then they were supposed to be there.
They weren't certified, qualified riggers?
No, sir.
You didn't think that was a problem?
No, sir.
You didn't identify that as a corrective item that your company can learn from in the future?
I don't recall. I don't recall if we listed that as a teachable moment, action item or not.
That's a pretty important action item, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, sorry.
Is it your understanding that TNT Creative Rigging was supposed to handle this entire lifting operation?
No, that is not my understanding of what they were supposed to do.
Who was supposed to participate in this lifting operation other than TNT?
Wave Mechanical and Wave Engineering.
I'll show you what I've marked as exhibit number 62 here. This is a document, banks labeled TNT 1490. Mr. Hamilton, do you see this document?
I do see that, yes.
This is a ticket for October 2021. Do you see that?
I do.
TNT had to go back out there in October, because I understood they took that HVAC unit back down to the ground, right?
Yes, that is correct.
And the second time TNT shows up, one of the comments they mentioned is they were gonna have a specialty rigging crew that was needed. Do you see that?
I do see that, yes.
Do you know why a specialty rigging crew went out there the second time?
After the incident, there was gonna be subsequent lifts that still needed to be taking place. And the unit that fell needed to get uprighted and removed from the job site. At that time, I made the determination that, given everything that had happened, that we, Wave Mechanical, would do a complete turnkey subcontract out of anything regarding hoisting, moving forward on the rest of the job, just given the recency of everything that had happened. So we made a conscious decision to subcontract that out. When we told TNT that, hey, we're gonna turnkey it out 100% from here moving forward, they said that they would be interested in performing that scope for us. And I'll say took it from there. So all subsequent lists after that were a complete turnkey offering from TNT.
Yeah, the second time and the third time TNT went out to this job site to participate in the lifting operation, they performed the entire lift from A to Z, right?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
They should have performed the lift the first time from A to Z, because the folks working for your company weren't qualified, were they?
No, sir. I'm not gonna agree with that.
And in this October lifting plan makes it crystal clear that the only party that's gonna be participating and performing all the work was TNT Crane and Rigging, right?
Yes, sir.
And the reason change was made, sir, was because in September, there was individuals that were participating in that lift for both Wade Mechanical and Wade Engineering, and they weren't certified or qualified to do so. Isn't that right?
No, sir.
In fact, you guys did the exact same thing in January of 2022 when TNT came back out there, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Again, in January of 2022, there was a step-by-step rigging plan that was put in place by your company, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Also makes it very clear that TNT Crane and Rigging will be performing all work associated with this operation, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Sir, looking back now, would you admit that there were individuals on that fourth floor that should have been participating in this lifting operation?
No, sir. I wouldn't admit that, or I don't agree with that.
Was wind one of the factors that played a role in Ms. Amendett's death?
This lawyer's an idiot.
I don't know.
Did you find out afterwards that the wind started to pick up after lunch?
I did not find that out.
Did you come to learn and conclude based on your investigation that the wind played a role in this unit falling over?
No, sir, I did not make that conclusion.
After commencing your investigation, you saying you don't remember why you concluded this unit fell over, or you sitting here today after conducting an investigation, you just don't know?
Sitting here today, I don't know why the unit fell over.
And there was nothing that you learned during your investigation that would cause you to reach a conclusion as to why this unit fell over, right?
Correct.
You sure you don't have any idea why this unit flipped over?
I'm sure I don't know what the ultimate cause was.
Was this unit top heavy and unstable, sir?
It was not top heavy, it was side heavy.
It was unstable?
Yeah, that I can't speak to if it was unstable. I just know that the center of gravity and the weight wasn't centralized and it wasn't distributed.
Were you aware of anything that TNT did to make your company aware that that unit had fallen over just the day before this man was killed?
Well, I'm aware the conversation between Mike Hembling, David Reed, and somebody from TNT had that conversation the morning of the lift, but I did not learn, I was a part of that conversation firsthand, I learned that after the fact.
What did Mike Kimberly tell you about that conversation?
He got a call from TNT, and that unit had tipped. It either tipped over the night before or the morning of when it was being loaded onto a truck, a semi-truck trailer to be brought in a rig to get transported to the site. And that TNT made Mike aware that it had tipped. It didn't look like it was damaged. And do we want to continue to move forward?
Somebody from TNT relayed to Mike Kimberly that the unit had fallen over the day before.
It was either the morning or the day over, I learned that during my conversation with Mike after the incident.
You come to learn at some point that this unit tipped over, not just because of the wind, but because it was actually being cabled up at the moment it tipped over?
Yes, yes, I did learn in speaking with individuals who were there at the time of that David had given the individual the direction to cable up as the incident occurred.
He gave who? He gave the crane operator?
You know, he gave the individual from TNT who was on the fourth floor in direct communication with the crane operator.
Who told you that?
Billy Baldwin.
Sir, I'm gonna show you what I marked as exhibit 44. It's a document, the cover page here, and you'll see on the second page that there's actually a blanket agreement between two parties. Do you see this?
Yes, I do.
Are you familiar with this contract with Burn Construction?
Yeah, yes, I am.
And one of the things that this master agreement does is it identifies clearly for Wade Mechanical what its scope of work was for this project, right?
Yes,
Specifically, as it's going to be applied to the work order in this case that we'll look at in just a second, SCG Mechanical had the obligation as it relates to that work order to furnish and pay for all materials, labor, fuel, equipment, tools, machinery, and supplies, and to perform all work and obtain and pay for all necessary permits. Do you see that?
yes, sir, I do.
Now, your company certainly had the obligation, had the opportunity to turn around and sub that work out for you, right?
Yes,
And in fact, they did that. They subbed portions of the work to Way Engineering and to TNT Crane Rig, right?
that's correct.
But it doesn't change the terms of this agreement, which still obligates SCG Mechanical as it relates to the specific work order to provide the scope of work outlined in this agreement, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And so if there's any doubt in the jury's mind as to whether or not SCG Mechanical had the obligation on the day this man was killed to perform the work under their work order, you would say as the operations manager, look, we subbed out some of the work to some sub-tier contractors, but it didn't alter the obligation that we had under this work order to perform it, right?
That's correct.
Ours is 30 minutes.
Right. 10-minute break. Please, it's 3:16. We'll come back at 3:26.
All right, I think we got through the depositions. So now I'm just going to peek at what's next.
Because you looked in, investigated this incident, and numerous.
So it looks like we have tomorrow, and it looks like there's another deposition. Looks like we have tomorrow. And then we have, oh, I didn't get them yet. They're over here. Share. 2 more videos, and then it's over. I do have a verdict. I don't have it recorded. Ooh, but I know what it is, and I can show it to you. So we have a couple more days until we get to the verdict. And then we'll know. And we'll know what this big guy, the big guy from Texas, one of the biggest lawyers in Texas, We'll see if he wins this case or not. I'm trying really hard to get OJ created real quick before I end this live. I should really pay attention more to what I'm doing, but I won't. But yeah, it's Friday, so there's no stream tomorrow. Work a double. Oh man, we are on episode 106 of OJ. And we are at the last few days of Detective Lag and Johnny Cochran fighting over and over and over again about the same thing. And then we get the real guy. We get Mark Verman on the stand. Let's see, 6:25. And then it begins. So I've been told over and over and over again. Oops, that's wrong. Oh. I really, really dislike this streaming software, guy. I'm just saying, this is the worst. Treats me like crap all the time. But it didn't do that. It didn't do what it was doing earlier at all today. So that's good. I didn't think we were going to get through that stream. All right, that's creating. Now I can edit this and send you guys all over to OJ. Customization, redirect, OJ. Done. Thanks for coming out, guys. I really, really appreciate it. I will see you all again very, very soon. Behave, okay? That's true.